This story is based on the real crime involving Daniel Moore, a 29-year-old man who in 2018 traveled to celebrate his first Valentine's Day with his girlfriend, Laura P., in Chile. What was meant to be a special night ended in a brutal homicide inside a private residence. According to case records, the scene was deliberately staged to resemble a romantic dinner, and the attacker had been hiding inside the house for hours. Laura was found deceased at the scene, while Daniel managed to escape with serious injuries. The suspect fled and has never been officially identified. I'm not the guy who makes a big deal out of dates, but this one mattered. It was my first Valentine's Day with Rachel, and she had been building it up for weeks. Every message hinted at something planned, something different. She kept saying I wouldn't forget it. Not in a teasing way, in a serious way. That alone should have been enough to make me slow down, but I didn't. I bought roses on my way there, more than I could comfortably carry. The guy at the shop wrapped them tight and wished me luck. I remember thinking how normal everything felt. Traffic, the radio, the weight of the flowers on my arm. It all felt stable, like nothing could slip out of place that night. Rachel lived alone in a small house on the edge of town. I'd been there plenty of times. Nothing fancy. One floor, a basement she never used, and a yard she never bothered with. When I parked, the lights were on inside. That calmed me. It told me she was home and waiting. I walked to the door rehearsing a stupid joke about Valentine's cliches. I was smiling like an idiot. I knocked expecting to hear her footsteps or her voice. Nothing happened. The door was unlocked. I pushed it open, still smiling, still relaxed, still thinking this was all part of her plan. Inside, the house smelled strongly of roses. Too strongly. Petals were scattered on the floor, forming a narrow path that led away from the living room. The lights were dim, not off, just low enough to make everything look intentional. This wasn't messy or rushed. This was planned. Before I followed the path, I stopped. That pause mattered. The silence wasn't normal for Rachel's place. No music, no TV, no background noise at all. I stood there holding the roses, listening to nothing, letting the quiet stretch longer than it should. The path led toward the basement door. I'd never been down there with her. She always said it was just storage. The door was open, and I could see a faint glow coming from below. Candlelight. Real candles, judging by the flicker on the walls. I called her name once. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't want to break the mood she'd clearly worked on. My voice didn't come back to me. It just vanished into the house. That's when I felt the first crack in my excitement. Small, but noticeable. I stepped closer to the basement door. The air was cooler there. The path of the petals continued down the stairs. Whatever she had planned, it was waiting for me below. Before going down, I stood at the top of the stairs longer than I wanted to admit. The candles below cast uneven light that moved constantly, never settling. The silence pressed on me. Not loud, not dramatic, just constant. I gripped the railing and focused on breathing slow and steady. I took the first step, then another. Each stair creaked under my weight. I counted them without meaning to. Halfway down, I noticed the smell change. The roses were still there, but something else mixed with it. Metallic, sharp. I ignored it because I wanted to. At the bottom, the basement opened up into a cleared space. A small table sat in the center with two chairs facing each other. Candles lined the walls and the floor, placed carefully. On the table was a heart-shaped cake, perfectly intact. Someone had put real effort into this. Then I saw Rachel. She was lying on her side, a few feet from the table. Her dress was dark, soaked unevenly. Blood pooled beneath her, thick and still. Her eyes were open, not wide, just open like she'd been interrupted. My body reacted before my head did. I dropped the roses. My legs shook, but they didn't lock. I backed away, one step at a time, trying to understand what I was seeing. I wanted to scream her name. I didn't. My throat refused to cooperate. I turned slightly, thinking about the stairs, about running, about anything that wasn't this. That's when I heard movement behind me. Before I turned around, I stood frozen, listening. Slow footsteps, controlled. someone else was in the basement with me. My heart beat so hard it hurt. I knew that if I turned, whatever was there would be real, and I wasn't ready for that. When I did turn, the man was already close. He wore a red dress, cheap but clean, and a wig that didn't quite sit right on his head. His makeup was heavy and uneven. His face was calm, not excited, not angry. Calm like this was a routine. He raised one hand, palm out, asking me to stop without saying it. I stopped. My back hit the wall. There was nowhere else to go. He spoke softly, almost politely. Sorry, I didn't mean to scare you. This part always looks worse than it is. He gestured toward Rachel's body, then toward the table. Dinner's getting cold. I worked hard on this. I shook my head, trying to speak, failing again. My legs felt weak, like they might give out without warning. He noticed. His eyes flicked down, then back up. You don't have to stand. Sit, please. It's Valentine's Day. I didn't sit. I couldn't. He sighed, not frustrated, just disappointed. He stepped aside, giving me a clear view of the stairs, then blocked them again with a small shift of his foot. I never get dates. People don't look at me that way. They look at you. She promised me one night where I wouldn't be alone. Before he moved again, I focused on the table, on the candles, on anything that wasn't his face. My breathing was shallow and fast. I tried to slow it down because dizziness would make everything worse. I needed to stay upright. I needed time. He pulled out one of the chairs and sat down smoothly. Sit with me. That's all I want. You don't have to eat. When I didn't move, he stood and crossed the space between us faster than I expected. He grabbed my arm, not hard enough to break skin, but hard enough to hurt. He guided me toward the chair and pushed me down. My knees buckled on impact with the seat. He sat across from me, adjusting his wig with care. She said you were kind. I hope that's true. He picked up a knife from the table. It wasn't a weapon, not yet. He used it to cut the cake, slow and precise. Each slice was neat. He placed one on my plate, then one on his. Every Valentine's Day I watched couples walk past my window, laughing, holding hands. Tonight is my turn. I shook my head again, finally managing words. Please, let me go. His expression tightened, just a little. No, not yet. He leaned forward, elbows on the table. She screamed more than I thought she would. I didn't like that. You're quieter. That helps. I felt something on my wrist, blood from where he grabbed me earlier. I stared at it, grounding myself in the detail. He followed my gaze and smiled faintly. Accidents happen. When I tried to stand, he moved instantly. He shoved the table into my legs, knocking the chair over. I hit the floor hard, pain shooting up my side. He was on me before I could crawl away, pressing a knee into my back. Stay, you're ruining it. Before he could do anything else, I reached back blindly and grabbed the nearest object. My hand closed around a candle holder. I swung without aim, hitting his arm. He yelped, more surprised than hurt, and shifted his weight. That was enough. I rolled onto my side and kicked, catching him in the stomach. He stumbled back, knocking over a chair. Candles fell, flames licking across the floor. Smoke filled the basement fast. I scrambled toward the stairs. My hands slipped on the steps, slick with sweat and something else. He grabbed my ankle, pulling me down hard. My head slammed into the wood. White spots burst across my vision. He dragged me back toward the table, breathing heavy now, the calm gone. You don't leave in the middle of a date? The fire spread. One of the shelves caught. Heat pressed against my skin. I kicked again, connecting with his face at this time. Something cracked. He screamed, high and sharp. His grip loosened. I crawled, dragged myself, every movement burning. I reached the stairs again as the smoke thickened. This time, he didn't follow fast enough. I pulled myself up, step by step, lungs screaming. I don't remember reaching the door. I remember cold air and collapsing onto the grass. I woke up in a hospital bed with bandages on my head and an oxygen tube in my nose. The room was quiet except for the machines. A police officer sat nearby. He didn't ask many questions. He already knew most of the answers. They never found him. The fire destroyed the basement and most of the house. Rachel's death was ruled a homicide. My statement filled pages. They told me I was lucky. I didn't feel lucky. Valentine's Day still comes every year. Stores filled with red hearts and cheap candy. Couples still walk past holding hands. I don't stop them. I don't look away either. I keep thinking about the table, the cake, the care he put into it, about how badly he wanted that night, about how close I came to staying there forever.
The session was scheduled late in the afternoon, when the building usually felt abandoned and every sound carried too far. I stayed seated behind my desk, reviewing notes I already knew by memory, because keeping my hands busy was the only way to avoid thinking about the date. Valentine's Day always destabilized patients, but with Claire it was never just discomfort. Dates acted like pressure points she couldn't ignore. I'd been treating her for months, and every session followed the same pattern of escalation. She arrived tense, spoke too fast, and felt emotionally drained, but never relieved. I learned quickly that, with her, progress was fragile and would collapse without warning. Claire entered the office without greeting me and closed the door carefully behind her. She stood still for several seconds before sitting down. Her shoulders were stiff and her hands already trembling. Her fingers were raw, nails broken, skin irritated from constant scratching. She avoided eye contact, but her posture was rigid, like a spring compressed too tightly. When she finally looked at me, I knew the session wouldn't stay under control for long. She began speaking immediately, her voice uneven, jumping from one thought to another without stopping. She talked about Marcus Hale, her former partner, describing years of manipulation, physical harm, and emotional control. Her words alternated between hatred and longing, never settling on either for more than a few seconds. She described multiple moments where she tried to hurt herself, sometimes alone, sometimes in places where she knew someone would eventually find her. She spoke about hospitals, isolation rooms, and medications that made her feel empty. Her tone stayed flat, but her body moved constantly, as if trying to escape the memories. As she spoke, the clinical picture became impossible to ignore. Extreme fear of abandonment, unstable self-image, intense emotional reactions, and self-harm used as regulation. I adjusted my tone, slowed my speech, and tried to keep her grounded without confronting her directly. She stopped suddenly and stared at me, her eyes wide and unblinking. She said Valentine's Day was the day she always broke, and that Marcus still owed that date. She said she needed him, regardless of what he had done, and that being away from him hurt more than any damage he ever caused. Before responding, I took a breath and chose my words carefully. I was aware that every sentence could push her further away or pull her back. I told her that contacting Marcus wasn't possible, that returning to him would put her in danger, and that the pain she felt didn't justify reopening those wounds. The tension didn't erupt immediately. Instead, it settled heavily between us. Claire leaned back into her chair, her breathing slowing in an unnatural way, and her gaze locked onto me with an intensity that made my skin tighten. She stopped reacting like a patient and started watching me like a threat. She stood up slowly and took a step closer, asking me why I wanted to keep her alone. Her voice was calm, stripped of emotion, which made the words feel sharper. I stood as well, trying to maintain distance without escalating the situation. Without warning, she screamed and dragged her nails across her arms, ripping at her skin hard enough to leave deep red marks. She didn't look at herself while doing it. She stared directly at me, her eyes wide and fixed as if waiting for my reaction. The tension spiked when she moved her hands to her neck and began clawing at her throat, digging her nails into the skin just below her jaw. She pulled downward repeatedly as if trying to tear something loose, breathing hard between cries. I felt my chest tighten as I realized she wasn't trying to scare me. She was trying to feel something else entirely. I stepped forward, raising my hands and telling her to stop, but she didn't slow down. Her nails dragged deeper into her neck, skin breaking under the repeated pressure, blood beginning to appear beneath her fingers. She kept her eyes locked onto mine the entire time, her expression focused and terrifyingly present. I reached for her wrists, trying to pull her hands away from her throat, and she reacted instantly. She swung her arm, and her nails caught my forearm, tearing through skin and sending a sharp burst of pain up my arm. I stumbled back, shocked by how fast it happened. She backed herself against the wall and continued clawing at her neck, dragging her nails downward again and again, gasping between movements. Her breathing became erratic, and her voice broke into frantic accusations that I was trying to control her, that I wanted to silence her the same way Marcus did. When I moved again to stop her, she lunged forward unexpectedly, scratching at my shoulder and neck, her nails digging in hard. Pain and panic collided as I struggled to keep my balance, fully aware that I was no longer in control of the situation. She pressed herself back against the wall and dragged her nails across her throat once more, peeling skin while staring straight at me. That image froze me in place. My heart was racing as I realized how close this was to becoming fatal. People began pounding on the door outside, shouting, but I couldn't step away. I grabbed her wrists again, using what strength I had left to pull her hands away from her neck. She screamed louder, twisting violently, her nails tearing into my skin as she fought back. The tension peaked when her resistance suddenly vanished. Her body went limp in my hands, and for a moment, I thought she had lost consciousness. Fear hit me hard as I called her name, loosening my grip just enough to check if she was breathing. She screamed again instantly, louder and sharper, accusing me of hurting her and trying to kill her. She collapsed to the floor, clutching her neck, sobbing uncontrollably while repeating that I did this to her. Security forced the door open moments later and pulled me away from her. I tried to explain, my hands shaking, blood visible on my arms and collar, but the scene spoke louder than anything I could say. Claire continued crying and pointing at me, her accusations filling the room. By the time emergency services arrived, the narrative had already formed, and I could feel it closing in around me. The police questioned me while Claire was taken out on a stretcher, her neck bandaged and her hands still shaking. I explained her condition, the meltdown, the self-harm, but I could see doubt settling into their expressions as they listened. Photographs were taken of my injuries, but they didn't erase the image of a man restraining a bleeding woman in a locked room. I was escorted out of the building, my office sealed off, my notes confiscated for review. Later that night, I was informed that Claire survived and formally accused me of assault. An investigation was opened, and my license was suspended, pending the outcome. The words felt unreal, heavy, and final. I replay that session constantly, not because I question what happened, but because I understand now how little control I ever had. Claire didn't need someone to save her that day. She needed someone to absorb her pain, and I was the closest target. The scratches healed. The memory didn't. Her eyes, fixed on mine while she tore at her own throat, still surface when the room goes quiet.
My name is Hannah, and when I think back to that year, the first thing I remember is how tired I was. Not sad in a dramatic way, not angry all the time, just worn down from constantly explaining myself to someone who never trusted me. That was my normal, And I accepted it because I didn't know what a calm relationship was supposed to feel like. My boyfriend at the time was Ethan, and being with him meant living under constant suspicion. Every message I received had to be justified. Every delay had to be explained. If I didn't answer fast enough, the questions multiplied. I learned to keep my phone face up at all times because hiding it made things worse. On Valentine's Day, he ended it without warning. One short message, no argument, no chance to respond. A few hours later, I saw pictures of him with another girl from school, smiling like the past year had never existed. Same places, same gestures, same comfort he never gave me. I didn't scream or break anything. I just sat on my bed and stared at the screen until my eyes burned. My chest felt tight and I couldn't slow my breathing. When my mum came in, I leaned into her because I didn't have the energy to hold myself together anymore. Dinner that night felt longer than usual. My dad, Robert, barely touched his food, and I could tell he was waiting for something. When he finally asked what happened, his voice was low and steady, but his eyes didn't leave my face. I told him everything, including the photos, including how fast Ethan moved on. My mum listened carefully, nodding slowly, like she was memorizing details instead of reacting emotionally. When I finished, the room went quiet in a way that made my shoulders tense. Robert leaned back in his chair and asked me if I wanted them to deal with it. He didn't say how, and that should have made me stop. Instead, I imagined Ethan panicking, being confronted, feeling small for once. That image felt comforting. I told them I didn't want him hurt. I explained it clearly. I said I only wanted him scared, embarrassed, reminded that actions had consequences. Claire smiled softly and told me not to worry, that they understood exactly what I meant. After that, Ethan vanished. No texts, no posts, no presents at school. At first, I felt relieved, then confused, then uneasy. Silence stretched longer than it should have, and nobody seemed to notice but me. Before anything happened, the house itself started to feel different. My parents were attentive in a way that felt invasive instead of caring. They watched my reactions closely, asked questions that didn't seem necessary, and exchanged looks I couldn't read. Our dog refused to go near the far side of the yard. When I tried to pull him toward the fence, he resisted, whining low in his throat. When he finally approached it on his own, he started digging with an intensity that didn't match play or boredom. The dirt there was loose, uneven, recently disturbed. I stood there watching Baxter, my stomach tightening slowly like my body was reacting before my mind caught up. There was no clear reason to be scared, but I felt exposed, like I was standing somewhere I shouldn't be. Before touching the ground, I hesitated longer than I want to admit. That pause felt heavy, like a warning I chose to ignore. I knelt and started digging with my hands, feeling cold soil push under my nails. When I touched plastic, my heart dropped immediately. I pulled carefully, already breathing too fast, already wishing I had stopped earlier. The black bag surfaced, thick and tied tight. The smell reached me before I opened it. Seeing Ethan's face didn't feel real. It felt staged, like something placed there on purpose for me to find. His skin was pale and stiff, his body separated into parts that didn't belong together anymore. I fell backward, gagging, my throat burning as I vomited onto the grass. The laughter started behind me, loud and uncontrolled. It wasn't nervous or shocked. It was joyful. I turned and saw my parents standing there, relaxed, smiling like they'd been waiting for this moment. Claire crouched beside the bag, fixing it carefully, smoothing the plastic with practiced hands. Robert looked at me with open satisfaction, like he was relieved I finally understood.
We didn't want you to find him like that, but we knew you would eventually notice something was off.
We tried to be patient, but hiding things like this gets exhausting after a while. They spoke without rushing, explaining everything like a shared secret. They told me they loved doing this, that it made them feel complete in a way nothing else ever did. They said becoming parents forced them to stop, and stopping felt like suffocating. We gave everything up for you, Hannah, and we never complained, but that part of us never disappeared.
We waited until you were old enough to understand that this is who we are, and who you are too.
Their voices were warm, almost affectionate, and that made it worse than anger ever could. Before I moved, Robert kept talking, his tone calm and confident, like he was proud of his restraint.
When you asked us to handle it, it felt like permission, like you finally saw us for who we really are.
We were careful with him, slow, methodical, because we wanted it done right after waiting so long. My legs finally responded, and I ran, grabbing whatever I could, my hands shaking so badly I dropped half of it. They didn't follow me. They just stood there, laughing softly, completely certain I wasn't really leaving.
You can run if you want, Hannah, but you don't get to pretend you're different.
I ran to my friend's house. I didn't sleep. Every sound made my chest tighten. I kept replaying their words, especially the part about permission, because no matter how I tried to deny it, they were right about that. I moved out as soon as I could, scraping together money, choosing cheap places, never feeling safe. I never went back. They never contacted me. That silence felt deliberate. Years later, I reported them. Saying it out loud felt like admitting guilt, not seeking justice. The police listened carefully and none of them looked surprised. When they searched the house, they found more graves. Many more. Different sizes, different depths. Some older than me. My parents were arrested without resistance, smiling like this was inevitable. One officer told me they had refined their process over time. Now I live alone, and guilt follows me everywhere. I thought about that dinner, that question, and how quickly I agreed. I think about how I didn't report them to the police earlier, and the lives I could have saved. I don't know why I took so long. I was scared. Scared that they came back for me and they knew that. I'm still scared. Scared that someone comes from me. Maybe a friend, maybe an associate. Maybe they escape prison and come by themselves. I just know that after that, my life changed. I'm ruined, and I don't think I'll ever be able to recover.
This story is based on the crimes of an Australian couple who operated between 1998 and 2004 in a suburban area of Victoria. According to police files and court records, the offenders maintained a stable family life while committing multiple homicides against acquaintances and young men connected to their household. Investigators later confirmed that the backyard of the family home had been used repeatedly to dispose of remains, and that the crimes stopped temporarily after the birth of their child. This story is based on those crimes, but all names, ages, and personal details were changed to protect the victim's privacy. Timelines, relationships, and specific events were altered for narrative purposes, while core elements such as manipulation, concealment within the home, and the delayed police discovery were retained to reflect the documented case.